Good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of the court. We are here to gather expert testimony from a leading digital forensics and e-discovery expert, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith has over 30 years of experience in forensic investigations that include the practices and procedures for conducting these investigations that involve digital evidence. The Global FVEY Summit has concluded with delegation participants from the following countries: the United Kingdom, the hosting nation, the United States, New Zealand, Canada, and Australia. All participating nations have experienced cybersecurity attacks, activated their business continuity incident response plans, and completed remediating the exploited vulnerabilities. The court has requested this expert testimony concerning cybersecurity incidents during the FVEY Summit to provide guidance and counsel for the court while adjudicating the cyber incidents during the FVEY Summit. This testimony will address the following topics: legal challenges with international cyber incidents, challenges accessing and retrieving electronic evidence on foreign soil and in the cloud, how the Australian team was influenced during the investigation by international law, possible conflicts between ethics and international laws during forensic investigations, and steps taken to protect FVEY nation citizens during the investigation. And now to address the questions of the court. What are the legal challenges associated with cyber incidents involving foreign countries? Cyber incident resolution in the courts is difficult within the same country and even more difficult when they involve foreign countries. We have criminal and civil law differences in each country's states, territories, and internationally. We have jurisdictional conflicts, attribution, and extradition difficulties when a country would like to hold the person who actually committed the crime accountable in a court of law. We have lack of investigation coordination and electronic investigation standards for use by court systems across borders, and even challenges in regards to geopolitical relationships between involved countries that can influence a country's decisions to prosecute cybercrime. The next question of the court: how do international laws affect e-discovery? It may be helpful to begin with a definition of digital forensics and e-discovery. Digital or computer forensic and e-discovery involves the identification, recovery, analysis, and presentation in court of relevant information taken from electronic devices such as computers and cell phones. Electronically stored information can be valuable for proving or disproving a fact in a legal proceeding, but more often it is used by companies to conduct business and record the historical activities of the organization or personal history of individuals. Evidence gathering and preservation standards don't exist, and it is a gray area that favors the criminal. For example, some have offered that organizations should plant electronic tracking beacons on their valuable information, so when stolen, authorities could track where they are being stored on the internet. And other organizations have stated that the beacons can be seen as illegal, unauthorized access to a hacker's computer, rendering their use as evidence as inadmissible in a court of law. This also reflects the inconsistency on how countries define the data privacy rights of its citizens as they relate to both law-abiding and law-breaking citizens. Legal challenges also exist with the differing and sometimes vague chain of custody requirements across legal systems. Most countries also require the submission of mutual assistance requests through official government channels to gain access to foreign cybercrime investigation information, and these can cause long delays in receiving information back from foreign criminal investigation units, causing long delays in adjudication of criminal or civil law infractions regarding cybercrime. The next question from the court: what international laws influence a forensic investigation in Australia? Australian laws take precedence for forensic investigations in Australia. The primary laws governing digital forensic investigations are the Telecommunications Interception and Access Act of 2015, This creates a statutory obligation for Australian telecommunications service providers to retain, for a period of 2 years, particular types of telecommunications data and introduces certain reforms to the regimes applying to the access of stored communications and telecommunications data under the TIA Act. Second, the Foreign Evidence Act of 1994. In all jurisdictions in Australia, there is a provision for the court to make an order for the issue of a letter of request to the judicial authorities of another country, provided that country is also a signatory to the Hague Convention on the taking of evidence abroad in civil or commercial matters, to take evidence from a person outside of Australia. The request is transmitted by the Australian government to the designated central authority of the foreign country, which then refers it to the relevant court. Third, the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act of 1987. Mutual assistance to and from Australia is governed by the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act. Mutual assistance is the process countries use to obtain government-to-government assistance in criminal investigations and prosecutions. Mutual assistance is also used to recover the proceeds of crime. Australia can make requests to any foreign country and can receive requests from any foreign country. Countries assist on the understanding that they will receive assistance in return when the need arises. This process is assisted by over 25 bilateral mutual assistance treaties to which Australia is a party. And lastly, the Crimes Act of 1900 and Criminal Code Act of 1995. These Australian federal laws form the foundation for all criminal law in Australia. Australia also conducts extensive cyber diplomacy with other countries to enhance its ability to fight cybercrime and cyberterrorism in Australia. Some examples of these efforts that drive additional standardization and norms when fighting cybercrime and conducting digital forensic investigations are, first, the Council of Europe Convention on Cybercrime, or the Budapest Convention. This proves the only binding international instrument on cybercrime. It serves as a guideline for any country developing comprehensive national legislation against cybercrime and is a framework for international cooperation between state parties to this treaty. Second, the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. This is Australia's national criminal intelligence agency that has positioned cybercrime analysts at the FVEY, International Cybercrime Coordination Cell in the United States, and at the National Cybercrime Unit in the United Kingdom to improve coordination between countries. Third, the Australian Transaction Reports and Analysis Center. This team focuses on the financial aspects of transnational cyber-enabled crime, tracking criminal financial transactions that occur online, and participates in international forums. Fourth, the Five Eyes Law Enforcement Group Cybercrime Working Group. This group of 5 nations share operating procedures and best practice approaches to maximize resources and act as an operational force multiplier in the fight against cybercrime. And fifth, Interpol and Europol. Australian government agencies engage strongly with multilateral law enforcement information sharing networks such as Europol and Interpol, who host cybercrime centers of excellence. The next question from the court: what are the legal challenges of accessing and retrieving electronic evidence stored on foreign soil or when data is stored in cloud services? Needing to access and retrieve information on foreign soil or from service providers in the cloud presents a number of challenges to every country. We must work through different citizen privacy laws, the fact that each country's existing laws cater to forensic evidence collection when investigators have physical access to computers and media, and not just logical access to information stored in the cloud, and this presents legal challenges regarding attribution and access. We face challenges with authentication requirements for data access requested from cloud providers. For example, to collect remote cloud data, investigators must thoroughly understand how the authentication systems used by cloud services work, both to design a collection system and to understand the limitations of the authentication system and its use in common collection operations. We must receive court-approved search warrants in all of the Five Eyes nations to provide access to citizens' cloud-hosted information, and we must agree on evidence collection methods that will stand up as valid and accurate in a court of law. For example, in Australia, it is agreed that the best way to collect remote cloud data in terms of forensic soundness is to use the law enforcement agency's collection environment with collection credentials sourced from client devices. The next question from the court: how did the international laws and jurisdictions influence the processes and procedures followed during the forensic investigation during the Five Eyes Summit? The forensic investigations were influenced by the Five Eyes Nations Agreement. The fact that each country understood that they would follow their own laws during the investigation, that the investigations were conducted by each country's respective cyber teams. They all understood that investigations across UK telecommunications are bound by UK law, and that mutual assistance requests must be submitted to any country to obtain access to information hosted on their soil, on business, personal, or cloud systems. The next question from the court: what conflicts arose between ethics and international laws during the forensic investigations? How did they affect the investigation, and how are they mitigated? In regard to conflicts with ethics, international laws, and mitigation during this investigation, the investigators wanted to look into a person known to be a ransomware hacker, Mr. Silver, suspected in this matter, and he was located in the United States. So the Australia investigation team filed a mutual assistance request with the U.S. The U.S. forensic examiners received U.S. court approval for a search warrant, and subsequent discovery information was shared by U.S. authorities with the Five Eyes nations. No attribution evidence was discovered, but there was evidence discovered that Mr. Silver may be involved in the disappearance and/or murder of his fiancée, presenting an ethical dilemma to all Five Eyes nation investigators. Yet all agreed that this evidence would be turned over to the U.S. authorities for further investigation. In regards to ethics standards, there is no agreed upon national or international standards and code of ethics involving forensic electronic discovery. John Sloan, a thought leader in digital forensics research and academic program design in the U.S., points out that as digital forensics gains prominence in the legal landscape, the lack of agreed upon standards is a big problem, and that various professional associations have created a hodgepodge of codes of ethics for members. Some of them are very detailed, others not so much. In Australia, we have led efforts by the Australian New Zealand Forensic Society, and the United States, we have efforts led by the National Institute of Standards and Technology and National Code of Professional Responsibility, all working to create acceptable ethics norms that drive professional consistency, followed by all digital forensic investigators. The next question presented by the court: what steps were taken to protect U.S. citizens during the forensic investigations? As discussed before, all the Five Eyes nations followed the U.S. laws and filed a mutual assistance request with the U.S. in regard to the investigation of the suspicion of attribution to a U.S. citizen named Mr. Silver. The U.S. forensic examiners received U.S. court approval for a search warrant, and subsequent discovery information was shared by U.S. authorities with the Five Eyes nations. No attribution evidence was discovered, but there was evidence discovered that Mr. Silver may be involved in the disappearance and/or murder of his fiancée, presenting that ethical dilemma to all Five Eyes nations. All agreed that the evidence would be turned over to the U.S. authorities for further investigation. All other investigative activity was conducted on Australian devices and networks. And the final question from the court: describe any risks to the country, businesses, or citizens from investigations. All digital forensic investigations have residual risk related to the national security of every country, possibly discovering vulnerabilities or secret information regarding a country's military or safeguards to its national sovereignty. Residual risk related to business reputation and operation damage and of course citizen privacy violations. Advancements in the creation of internationally accepted standards and norms to govern digital forensic investigations will improve the overall accuracy and consistency of evidence collection and legal proceedings concerning cross-border cybersecurity matters. Thank you for allowing me to testify for the court this afternoon. And don't hesitate to call me back for additional testimony.